Trust is a fragile thing. It takes decades to build, but only one selfish act to shatter it forever. And when it breaks, it doesn't just hurt, it leaves a scar. I never thought my own grandson would be the one to test mine. My name is Walter Briggs. I'm 72 years old. I've lived a long, steady life in a small Midwestern town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and folks wave from their porches at dusk. For 39 years, I worked as an accountant, the man neighbors called when they wanted their numbers checked or their budgets balanced. I was never flashy, never reckless, and I carried myself with quiet dignity. After my wife, Margaret, passed 5 years ago, I found comfort in routine, keeping her garden neat, walking to the post office each morning, and keeping a watchful eye on the family she loved so fiercely. That family is my anchor now. My daughter Claire calls when she can. My grandson, Ethan, is 23, tall and charming, the kind of boy who could walk into a room and win people over with a smile. Margaret used to say he inherited my eyes, but not my patience. I believed him to be the future of our family. I wanted to believe in him. Maybe that's why what he did cut so deeply. It started small, the kind of moments you almost shrug off. Ethan always had a restless streak, borrowing money for emergencies, then forgetting to pay it back. He was generous with his promises, but stingy with his follow-through. Still, I excused it. After all, hadn't I once been young and a little foolish, too? I remembered myself at 23, full of ideas and stubborn pride. I told myself he'd grow out of it, but the truth was harder to ignore. One Sunday evening, after Claire and her family left my house, Ethan lingered behind. He sat at my kitchen table, drumming his fingers against the wood, avoiding my eyes. Then he laughed, too casually, and said, "Grandpa, I might need some help with travel expenses soon. Just a quick trip with some friends. Nothing big." I gave him the kind of look Margaret used to give me when she suspected I was holding back details on the grocery bill. "Travel? You mean a vacation?" He grinned, leaning back in the chair. "Sort of. Just a little getaway before life gets serious, you know? Everyone's doing it." Something in my chest tightened. At 72, getaways and quick trips sounded frivolous. My generation saved for months just to take the family camping. But I said nothing, only nodded slowly, and let the matter drop. That night I sat in Margaret's old recliner with the TV droning in the background, her framed photograph perched on the mantel. I spoke aloud the way I sometimes do when the house feels too quiet. "He's testing me, Maggie," I whispered. "He's pushing to see how far he can go." I thought about the boy Ethan had been, the child who used to run across my lawn, begging me to teach him how to ride a bike. The teenager who slumped on my porch steps after his first heartbreak, too proud to cry but too broken to speak. I remembered staying up late to help him with his college essays, reading draft after draft until my eyes blurred. He was more than just my grandson. He was a piece of Margaret still alive, the reason I kept trying even when grief pulled me under. So when Ethan hinted about help with travel, I wanted to believe it was just that, a hint, not a test. I wanted to believe he respected me too much to cross the line, but betrayal doesn't announce itself politely. It waits for you to let your guard down. The first real red flag came a few days later. Ethan stopped by again, breezy and casual as ever. He noticed the stack of envelopes on my desk and asked if I ever used online banking. I chuckled, telling him old habits die hard. Numbers on paper comforted me. Then, almost offhandedly, he said, "Grandpa, do you mind if I use your card just for gas?" I'm low until payday. I hesitated. My instincts screamed for caution, But then I thought about the countless times I'd held Ethan as a boy, about how much Margaret wanted me to trust him. I sighed and handed over my credit card. "Just for gas and groceries," I said firmly. He flashed a grin, quick and charming. "Of course. Don't worry." When the door closed behind him, I told myself it was fine, that he was young, that it was only a temporary favor. But a pit of unease settled in my stomach, heavy and unmoving. That night, when I logged into my account, something I rarely did, the unease turned into a chill. The screen glared back at me with rows of charges: airline tickets, a hotel reservation, expensive restaurants. I sat frozen in the glow of the monitor, Margaret's picture staring down from the mantel. My hand trembled as I rubbed my forehead. It wasn't gas. It wasn't groceries. It was a betrayal. I closed the laptop softly, as though making too much noise would confirm what I'd just seen. My grandson hadn't asked. He hadn't even considered what it would mean. He had used me, used the trust I'd built over 72 years for a quick trip. And in that moment, I knew life would never be the same between us. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the numbers on the screen, the mounting charges stacked one after another, like stones laid on my chest. Airline tickets, hotel bookings, a string of luxury charges in cities I hadn't set foot in for decades. Each entry was a reminder that my grandson, the boy I once trusted with my tools, had now stolen something far greater: my faith in him. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee untouched, staring at the credit card lying in front of me. My hands hovered over it, torn between cutting it in half and waiting to confront him face to face. Margaret would have told me to breathe first, to gather the facts before leaping into anger. So I did what I always do. I thought like an accountant, cold, careful, methodical. I wrote down each charge on a yellow legal pad: dates, amounts, locations. The totals climbed higher than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just a tank of gas or a few groceries. It was close to 3 months of my pension, drained in a matter of days. By late afternoon, Ethan came by, breezing through my front door without knocking, as if my home were a convenience store. He dropped his keys on the counter and smiled. "Thanks again, Grandpa. You really saved me." I watched him closely. Not a flicker of guilt, not even hesitation. He was already on his phone, laughing with someone, probably one of the friends he'd bragged to. "Ethan," I said slowly, my voice carrying the weight of a warning bell. He looked up, one eyebrow cocked. "Yeah? Do you want to tell me about the airline tickets, the hotel?" For the first time, his smile faltered. A shadow crossed his face, but only for a moment. Then he shrugged. "Oh, that. It's just a quick trip, like I said. Me and a few buddies are heading out for a weekend. No big deal." "No big deal?" My voice cracked sharper than I intended. "You used my card without asking. That's theft, Ethan." He rolled his eyes, sinking into a chair like a sulking child. "Don't be dramatic, Grandpa. It's just a card. You act like I emptied your savings." The words hit me harder than a fist. Just a card. That card had carried Margaret and me through lean years, bought Christmas dinners when money was thin, paid hospital bills when she grew ill. It wasn't the plastic. It was everything it represented: responsibility, respect, hard-earned trust. I leaned forward, my hands braced on the table. "Ethan, when you take without asking, when you assume you're entitled, it's not just money. It's disrespect. To me. To everything I've built." He gave a short laugh, but there was a nervous twitch in it. "You're overthinking. I'll pay you back when I can. Relax." The air grew heavier between us. My chest burned, not from anger alone, but from a deep, hollow disappointment. I had always believed family meant accountability, that we carry one another with care, not convenience. "You think this is about dollars and cents?" I asked softly, almost to myself. "This is about trust, Ethan. Once it's broken, it's near impossible to put back together." He didn't answer. Instead, he stood abruptly, pocketed his keys, and muttered something about being late to meet his friends. The door slammed behind him, and I was left staring at the empty space he'd occupied, my ears ringing with silence. That night, I couldn't sit still. I walked the length of the house, Margaret's photograph watching me from every angle. I whispered to her again as I had the night before. "What would you have me do, Maggie? He's our grandson. But he's not the boy you knew anymore. He's someone else now." My mind replayed old memories. Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor while I taught him how to count coins from a glass jar, his eyes wide with wonder at the value of a simple quarter. The teenager asking me for advice before his first summer job interview. The boy who used to tell me I was his hero. When had that boy turned into this man who saw me only as a wallet? The next day, I went to see my daughter. Claire's home smelled of fresh paint and laundry detergent, the kind of suburban comfort she'd worked hard to build. She listened quietly as I explained what Ethan had done. Her shoulders sagged with a sigh. "Dad, I'll talk to him. You know how he is. He's impulsive, but he doesn't mean harm." I stared at her, stunned. "He doesn't mean harm? Claire, he stole from me. He didn't ask. He laughed in my face." She pressed her lips together, guilt flickering across her eyes. "I know, but he's young. Maybe cut him some slack this time?" The words cut deep. My own daughter excusing what should never be excused. I nodded stiffly, biting back the words I wanted to say. On the walk home, my anger solidified into something colder. If Claire wouldn't hold Ethan accountable, then it fell to me. I'd been patient. I'd been forgiving. But patience, I realized, was wasted on someone who mistook it for weakness. That night, I opened my laptop again. The charges had grown. Another restaurant, another bar. Ethan was treating my card like a bottomless well. And in that glow of the screen, the first real thought of retaliation sparked in my mind. The following week blurred into a haze of numbers, bank alerts, and sleepless nights. Every time I logged in, more charges appeared. Expensive dinners in cities I'd never been to, shopping sprees that made no sense. My grandson wasn't just reckless, he was flaunting my life's work as if it were his own play money. One evening I sat in the den with the lamp casting a dim pool of light over my desk. The legal pad in front of me looked more like a crime scene than a record of expenses. Rows of neat handwriting charted Ethan's trail across the country. The total was obscene. Enough to cover an entire year of my property taxes, enough to fund the scholarship I'd once dreamed of setting up in Margaret's name. I pressed my palms against my eyes, willing the ache in my chest to ease. My thoughts circled back, again and again, to the same question. How could he do this to me? The answer came in the form of a phone call. Ethan's number lit up my screen around midnight. "Grandpa," he said, his tone syrupy, too sweet to be natural. "Just checking in. You see my message earlier?" "No," I said flatly. "Well, listen, I just wanted you to know I'll be gone a few days. Quick trip, like I said. Don't worry about the charges. I'll pay you back when I land. My new job, it's practically guaranteed. This is just a little celebration." I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I asked, "Did you think you could take without asking and I wouldn't notice?" He laughed. actually laughed, as though I'd told a joke. "Grandpa, come on. Don't act like it's the end of the world. You've got more than enough. And I'm family. Isn't that what it's for?" The casual cruelty in his words stunned me. Family. As if that word was a license to exploit. "Ethan," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it, "you've crossed a line." He sighed, impatient. "Relax, okay? I'll call you when I'm back. We'll talk then." The line went dead before I could answer. I sat in the dark for a long time, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, Margaret's picture catching the faint light from the lamp. For the first time since her passing, I wished she were here to see what had become of the boy she once held in her arms. The next morning I walked to the bank. The teller, a woman I'd known for years, looked up in surprise when I slid my card across the counter. "I need to know exactly what's been charged," I said. My voice shook, but my resolve didn't. She clicked through the records, her face tightening as the list grew. "Mr. Briggs," she said gently, "this account is being drained quickly. Would you like me to place a temporary hold?" I opened my mouth to say yes, but something stopped me. Not yet. Not now. Timing mattered. If I froze the card too soon, Ethan would simply shrug it off, borrow from someone else, and learn nothing. "No," I said finally, forcing a steady tone. "Not yet. I just need to see." Walking home, I felt the seed of something take root. I wasn't just an old man being taken advantage of. I was an accountant who'd spent decades untangling fraud, tracking down errors, and setting accounts straight. Numbers had always told me the truth, even when people tried to hide it. And right now, the numbers told me Ethan was spiraling into arrogance. That night, I made myself a simple dinner, soup and bread, but barely touched it. My mind kept turning over the possibilities. I could confront him again, I could call the police, I could cut ties completely, but each option felt hollow. I didn't want a scene that fizzled out into excuses. I wanted a lesson, one he would never forget. The next call came 2 days later. Ethan, sounding triumphant. "Grandpa, we're boarding now. This trip is going to be epic. Don't stress, okay? When I get back, I'll tell you all about it." I held the phone against my ear, my jaw tightening. The audacity of him bragging about a trip he'd stolen from me. "Ethan," I said quietly, "actions have consequences. You may not see them yet, but they're closer than you think." He chuckled, misinterpreting my words as another empty warning. "You worry too much, Grandpa. Just enjoy yourself while I'm gone." When the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the card on the table. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with decision. The first hint of my plan crystallized in that moment. If Ethan wanted to treat my card like a bottomless well, then he'd learn what it meant when the well suddenly ran dry, at the worst possible moment. I didn't know all the details yet, but I knew this. I would not let my grandson humiliate me and drain everything Margaret and I had worked for. If it meant watching him stumble, then so be it. And for the first time in days, I felt something like calm. The calm of a man who knew he was no longer the victim, but the architect of what came next. The morning Ethan's flight took off, I woke before dawn. The house was still, shadows stretched long across the walls. For the first time in a week, I felt an odd clarity, as if all the restless pacing, the sleepless nights, had led me here. I brewed a pot of coffee, poured it into Margaret's favorite mug, and set it down in front of me at the kitchen table. Beside it lay my credit card, silent, almost mocking. The phone sat in my hand, waiting. I dialed the bank. The voice on the other end was polite, practiced. "Good morning. This is Sarah at First National. How may I help you today?" I cleared my throat. "My name is Walter Briggs. I need to freeze my credit card. Immediately." There was a pause as she typed. "Certainly, Mr. Briggs. May I ask if the card has been lost or stolen?" I let out a slow breath. "You could say stolen, by someone I trusted." Within minutes it was done. The account locked, the card rendered useless. Ethan and his friends were already thousands of feet in the air, laughing over overpriced drinks, blissfully unaware that their party had just hit an invisible wall. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the decision pressing down and lifting me up all at once. Guilt flickered at the edges of my mind. What kind of grandfather sabotages his own grandson? But then I remembered the laughter in Ethan's voice when I'd called his theft by its name. "Don't be dramatic, Grandpa. This wasn't sabotage. This was consequence." By the time the sun crept higher, casting light across Margaret's framed photograph, my phone buzzed. Ethan. I let it ring twice before answering. "Grandpa!" His voice was sharp, frantic. "What the hell did you do? My card's not working. We tried to pay for the rental car and it declined. Twice. Everyone's looking at me like I'm a joke." I closed my eyes, listening to the panic he'd never let anyone else hear. "Actions have consequences, Ethan," I said evenly. "You're learning that now." "You can't do this," he snapped. His voice cracked, high-pitched with desperation. "We're stuck here. My friends are furious. Fix it now." I sipped my coffee, calm as a judge. "No, Ethan, I won't fix this for you. I've fixed enough already. If you wanted access to my money, you should have asked. Instead, you chose theft." "You're unbelievable," he spat. "Do you want me to look like an idiot in front of everyone?" "You did that yourself," I replied quietly. For a long moment the line was filled with silence, broken only by his ragged breathing. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone, my hand steady. For the first time in days, I felt no tremor of doubt. I had shifted the balance, the power that Ethan wielded so casually. His assumption that I would always cover, always forgive, was gone. The rest of the day passed slowly. I went about my chores, trimming the hedge, sweeping the porch, paying the electric bill, all with a strange sense of calm. Each small task reminded me I still had control over my life, my legacy, even if my grandson thought otherwise. That evening another call came. This time his tone was venomous, laced with fury rather than fear. "You humiliated me," Ethan shouted the moment I picked up. "At the counter, in front of everyone, my friends laughed at me. Do you know how that feels?" I clenched the receiver. "Yes," I said softly. "I know exactly how humiliation feels. That's how I felt when I saw what you did to my account. That's how I felt when you laughed at me for calling it theft." "You don't get it," he raged. "You've lived your boring little life in this small town. You don't understand what it's like out here. I need this trip. I deserve it." The words chilled me. Deserve, as though my decades of saving, working, and sacrificing existed only to bankroll his fleeting pleasures. "You deserve nothing you haven't earned," I said firmly, "and you will not earn it at my expense." He cursed under his breath, the kind of raw, ugly language I'd never expected to hear from him. Then, as if realizing anger wasn't working, he shifted tactics. "Please, Grandpa, just this once. Don't let me down. I'll straighten up after this. I promise promises. I'd heard too many." "No," I said, finality ringing in my tone. "You've already let yourself down. This is where it ends." The silence stretched long before he hung up again. That night, lying in bed, I thought of Margaret. I imagined her voice, calm and steady. "Sometimes love isn't giving, Walter. Sometimes it's refusing. For the first time, I allowed myself a thin smile. Ethan thought he held all the cards, but now, without warning, the table had turned, and the game was only beginning. By the next morning, I expected silence. I thought maybe Ethan would sulk, wait me out, or lean on his friends until he found another way home. Instead, my phone started buzzing before breakfast. I let it ring once, twice. On the third call, I picked up. "Grandpa," Ethan hissed, his voice low and furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We landed, and the card still doesn't work. Customs flagged it. They pulled me aside like I was some kind of criminal. My friends went through fine, and I was stuck answering questions for half an hour. Everyone's staring at me like I'm a fraud." I set my coffee cup down, steady. "You are a fraud, Ethan. You spent money that wasn't yours. What did you think would happen?" His laugh was sharp, bitter. "Oh, so now you're the wise old man teaching me a lesson? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you enjoy this? Do you like watching me fall on my face?" "No," I said quietly. "I hate it, but I hate even more what you've become." That stopped him for a moment. I could hear muffled voices in the background, his so-called friends probably pressuring him to sort things out. Then he came back, louder. "You don't get it, Grandpa. This isn't just about me. My friends counted on me. I told them we'd be fine. Now they're furious, and I look like a fool. All because you wanted to prove a point." "Because I wanted to prove a point?" I repeated, my voice sharp with disbelief. "No, Ethan, because I wanted to protect myself from being drained dry. You think money grows back like weeds? It doesn't. Every dollar you stole was a piece of my life's work, and you spat on it." He cursed under his breath. "God, you're impossible. You act like I ruined your life. It was just a trip." My jaw tightened. It wasn't just a trip. It was trust. It was respect. You don't see it now, but you will. The line went silent, then he hung up on me again. I set the phone down, my hand trembling, not from fear, but from the ache of disappointment. The boy I'd once lifted onto my shoulders at the county fair, who had called me his hero. Now he was spitting venom at me like I was the enemy. The hours crawled by. I tried distracting myself with chores, watering the garden, tightening a loose hinge on the back gate, sorting Margaret's old recipes into a binder. But each quiet moment left me alone with my thoughts. Had I gone too far? Was I punishing him or saving him? By late afternoon, another call came. This time his tone was different, less rage, more desperation. "Grandpa," he said, his voice tight, "please, just fix this. I'll pay you back when I can, I swear. But right now, I need you. My friends won't cover me. They're saying I tricked them. They're talking about leaving me here. Do you know what that would do to me?" I closed my eyes. His words tugged at the part of me that still saw the little boy in overalls running through my yard. But I forced myself to answer with the truth he needed, not the comfort he wanted. "You put yourself here, Ethan, and if your friends walk away, maybe that's the company you deserve. Better to learn now than later who stands by you when things get hard." He groaned in frustration. "You're ruining everything. Why are you doing this to me?" "Because you did this to me first," I said softly. That ended the call. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. My chest felt heavy, but beneath the ache was something sharper. Resolve. This wasn't about punishing Ethan anymore. It was about drawing a line in stone, one that could never be erased. The next day, my phone stayed eerily quiet. No calls, no texts. At first, I wondered if he'd given up. But then, in the late afternoon, a new number rang. An international code. I answered. A man's voice, clipped and formal, came through. "Mr. Briggs, this is Officer Hernandez with Customs at airport name. We need to verify some activity with your credit account. There have been reports of potential fraud involving your grandson." I gripped the phone tighter. My voice came out calm. "Yes, that would be correct. The card was used without my permission." The officer thanked me, asked a few clarifying questions, then hung up. I sat back in my chair, stunned. My private act, freezing the card, had just rippled into something larger. It wasn't only between Ethan and me anymore. Institutions, rules, the law itself were beginning to close in around him. And for the first time, I realized this was no longer just a lesson. It was a reckoning. The following morning, I woke to silence. No calls, no angry messages, no desperate pleas. For a moment, I wondered if Ethan had finally accepted the situation. Maybe he was licking his wounds, figuring out how to pay his way, maybe even learning the value of responsibility the hard way. But just before noon, the phone rang again. A familiar number this time. Ethan's. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself. "Grandpa," he whispered urgently, his voice strained. They pulled me aside again. "Customs. They said the card was flagged for fraud. They're asking questions I can't answer. My friends went through, but I'm stuck in some little office with 2 officers staring me down. You have to fix this." I could almost picture him there. Sweaty palms, fake confidence stripped away, his charm useless against uniformed men with clipboards. The image stirred both sorrow and satisfaction in me. "I told them the truth," I said evenly, "that you used my card without permission." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then he erupted. "You told them what? Do you know what that means? They think I'm a criminal. You're ruining my life, Grandpa." My grip on the phone tightened. "No, Ethan, you ruined your own life when you thought stealing from me was a game. Now you're facing the consequences. That's not me ruining you. That's you meeting reality." In the background, I heard a muffled voice instructing him to hang up. His tone shifted, suddenly small, frightened. "Please, Grandpa, don't let them do this. Just tell them it's fine. Tell them you gave me permission. I'll never ask again. I swear." The plea pierced me, tugging at a grandfather's instinct to protect. For a moment I wavered. I thought of Margaret, of how she always believed in forgiveness. But then another memory struck sharper. The way Ethan had laughed when I called it theft. The way he'd said, "It's just a card, Grandpa." I steadied my breath. "No, Ethan, I won't lie for you. Not this time. You'll have to answer for what you did." He groaned, a sound of frustration and fear before the line went dead. I sat there for a long while, the silence of my kitchen wrapping around me like a cloak. For decades, I had been the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who stepped in quietly to make things right. But now, for the first time, I was letting the storm fall where it belonged. An hour later, the phone rang again. This time it was Officer Hernandez, the same man I'd spoken to the day before. "Mr. Briggs, thank you for your cooperation," he said. "Your grandson is being released, but the matter has been documented. He'll have to make alternative arrangements for payment while he's abroad. We strongly suggest you keep the account frozen to prevent further misuse." I thanked him, my voice steady, though my hands trembled after I hung up. For the rest of the day, I tried to go about my routine. I swept the porch, pruned Margaret's roses, even walked to the corner store for bread. But under it all was the knowledge that Ethan had finally been stripped of his illusions. His friends would see him for who he was, a man who boasted about wealth that wasn't his, who strutted on credit built by another man's life. That evening, as the sun dipped low, my phone buzzed with a new message, a text from Ethan. "I hate you. You made me look like trash. Don't expect me to ever forgive you." I stared at the words, my chest aching. There it was, the raw truth of how he saw me, not as a grandfather, but as an obstacle to his indulgence. I set the phone down without replying. Some wounds couldn't be bandaged with words. Later, as I sat in Margaret's chair, I whispered aloud, "He thinks this is the end of me, but it's the beginning of him. Either he changes or he falls, but I won't let him drag me down with him." And with that, I knew the balance had shifted entirely. Ethan's arrogance had brought him face to face with the law, his friends, and his own limits. I wasn't just teaching him a lesson anymore. I was protecting the legacy Margaret and I had built. This was no longer a family spat. It was a line drawn in stone. The day after Customs released him, Ethan finally called again. His voice no longer carried the cocky ease it once had. It was tight, desperate, and edged with something I hadn't heard in him for years. Fear. "Grandpa," he said, almost whispering, "I need your help. Please, my friends. They're done with me. They won't cover my costs. They said I lied, that I tricked them into coming. They're threatening to leave me here alone. I don't have cash. I don't have a card. I can't even book a flight home. Please, just help me get out of this." I listened, my heart aching. This was my grandson, the boy I had once rocked to sleep, the young man I had prayed would carry our family name with dignity. But this was also the same grandson who had laughed at my pain, stolen from me, and spat venom when I dared hold him accountable. "You've put yourself in this position, Ethan," I said firmly, "and for once I won't save you from it." His voice cracked. "Grandpa, please, don't do this. I'll never forgive you if you let this happen to me." I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. "Then you'll never forgive me, because I won't undo what you've done." The silence on the line stretched long. Then his tone turned bitter again. "So this is it, huh? You'd rather see me rot than lift a finger. Some grandfather you are." "No," I said softly, but my words cut sharper than a blade. "I'd rather see you learn the value of honesty than keep watching you drown in entitlement. If I rescue you now, you'll never change. And I won't hand my legacy to someone who treats it like trash." He let out a long, ragged sigh. "You think this makes you strong? You think this makes you noble? You're just an old man clinging to control." I didn't rise to the bait. I had spent a lifetime learning that true strength wasn't in shouting louder. It was in standing firm when others tried to push you over. "This isn't about control, Ethan," I said quietly. "It's about boundaries. I've given you chance after chance. I've forgiven, I've overlooked, I've excused. But there comes a time when love means saying no. This is that time." His voice grew sharp, almost frantic. "So you're just going to let me crash? Let me be stranded? What do you think Mom will say when she finds out you did this to me?" I felt a familiar stab of pain at the mention of my daughter. Claire had already excused his behavior once. Maybe she'd do it again. But I refused to let her weakness guide me. "She'll say what she wants," I answered, "but I'll know the truth. And so will you." For a long while, neither of us spoke. I heard muffled airport announcements in the background, the shuffle of feet, a distant voice calling flights. And then, finally, Ethan spoke again, softer this time. "I can't believe you'd choose your pride over me." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I didn't choose pride. I chose survival. I chose to protect what your grandmother and I built with our bare hands. If you ever want to be part of that, you'll have to earn it. But tonight, Ethan, you'll face this alone." The line went dead. I sat at the table long after, staring at Margaret's picture. My hand rested on the frame as if she might speak through it, telling me I'd done the right thing. The ache in my chest was heavy, but beneath it lay something unshakable: conviction. That evening, I received a brief message from Customs, confirming Ethan had been released to make his own arrangements. No charges pressed, not this time, but the record would follow him, a stain he couldn't laugh away. I imagined him sitting alone in a foreign airport, friends gone, charm useless, finally forced to confront the reality that had been waiting for him all along. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of my role as patriarch, not as the indulgent grandfather who handed out money and forgiveness like candy, but as the man who drew a line that could not be crossed. And though it broke my heart, I knew it was the only way forward. Weeks passed before I saw Ethan again. When he returned, it wasn't with the triumphant swagger he had left with, or the smirk of a young man who believed the world owed him comfort. He came back quiet, hunched, his eyes shadowed. I spotted him across the churchyard one Sunday morning, standing awkwardly near his mother. Claire waved, trying to pretend everything was normal, but Ethan never met my gaze. He kept his hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders tight, like a man carrying shame he couldn't shake off. The family murmured about how his trip had ended early, how he'd run into some trouble. Claire glossed over the details, speaking in vague tones that fooled no one. I kept silent. There was no need to announce the truth. The truth had already carved its mark on him. That afternoon, I sat alone on my porch, with Margaret's roses blooming at my side. The air was cool, carrying the scent of cut grass and wood smoke from a neighbor's yard. I thought back to every step of this ordeal: the sleepless nights, the arguments, the decision to freeze the card mid-flight. It had been a line I never imagined I'd have to draw, not with my own flesh and blood. Did it hurt? More than I could ever put into words. Watching Ethan stumble, watching his arrogance collapse into humiliation, it broke something in me, too. A grandfather should never feel the need to protect himself from his grandson. But reality doesn't bend to what we wish it to be. Reality demands we act, even when it tears at our hearts. In the days that followed, Ethan avoided me. He stopped coming by unannounced, stopped calling, stopped treating my home like a second pantry. At first, the silence gnawed at me. The house felt emptier than ever, and I wondered if I had lost him for good. But slowly I began to notice small shifts. The anger in his eyes dulled to something else, unease, perhaps, or even reflection. Once I caught him watching me across the yard, his face unreadable. Another time he almost opened his mouth to speak before turning away. I didn't chase him. I didn't press. Some lessons take root only in silence. Meanwhile, my own heart grew lighter. Each day that passed without a frantic bank alert, without the sting of betrayal fresh in my chest, was a reminder that I had done what needed to be done. I had not only protected my finances, I had protected my dignity, my legacy, and the memory of the woman who built it all beside me, Margaret. I often imagined what she would have said if she had been alive through all of this. She was softer than I ever was, quicker to forgive, slower to anger. But she was also wise, and in my quiet moments, I heard her voice in the back of my mind. You did what I couldn't. You drew the line he needed. One evening, weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not a bank statement. A handwritten envelope, the ink smudged slightly. Ethan's handwriting. Inside, a short note. Grandpa, I'm angry. I probably will be for a while. But I know I messed up. I thought I could get away with it. I didn't. I don't know if I can fix things, but I'll try. Ethan. I read it 3 times before setting it down. The words weren't an apology, not fully, but they were a start, a crack in the armor he had built around himself. Maybe, just maybe, the lesson had begun to sink in. I didn't reply right away. Some things require time. Instead, I placed the letter inside Margaret's old Bible, tucked between the worn pages she used to read each night, a reminder that even broken trust can leave room for redemption if the other person is willing to reach for it. And me? I felt something close to peace. I knew the road ahead would not be simple, but I also knew that, for the first time in years, I had reclaimed control of my life and legacy. I had reminded Ethan, and myself, that dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered, and I would never surrender mine again. That night, as the sun slipped below the horizon and the house filled with twilight shadows, I sat by Margaret's photograph and whispered the words I had carried since the very beginning. Trust is fragile. Ethan shattered mine. But when customs pulled him aside, he learned the truth. It was never about a card. It was about me, and I'm not so easily replaced.